Adrian. For those who don't know, it is 9 a.m. for Adrian right now. So hello from the future. It's 9 p.m. here. Uh, we've
Hi.
just finished, we've just finished watching Special Needs Revolt. What did everybody think? Thank you so much for allowing us to film, like to screen your film tonight. It's been amazing. As you know, I love the film. I always gush about it to people, and I'm so glad that we were able to share it with everyone here tonight. Thank you so much for being here as well. It means so much to our community here that you were able to join us. And without further ado, let's get on to some questions. So your film, Special Needs Revolt, takes us on a wild ride through satire, dystopia, and diffability pride. How did you land on Billy as the hero? And blah, blah, blah. And what tone were you aiming for with this journey?
Well, what led me to have Billy Bates be the main hero of the film, a person with Down syndrome, um, goes back to um, my own history being in special ed school and being with people with disabilities and my whole life and being an advocate for people with disabilities. And I would say what the big inspirations to have Billy have Down syndrome was not only trauma entertainment, the trauma films, but this character called the R word policeman, I won't say the word, but he was on um YouTube back in the early days. It was an actual person with Down syndrome who played this policeman character, and I thought he would be perfect to play the part of Billy Bates, but unfortunately I wasn't able to get him because of issues with his brother saying, that it has to be, if I wanted him to act in the film, it had to be a SAG union, SAG-AFTRA production, and the production had to be $1 million. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to get him, but I was able to find somebody else through another film I did called Clowns in the Woods, just by sheer luck. That's a story in itself. But it's the person I found to play Billy Bates. He turned out to be a great actor in terms of how he delivered his lines and stuff. If people, just a side note, if people did want to use him in the future for a film, maybe not so much in Australia because of travel costs, or maybe. Um, he does need to have cue cards to do his lines, but he delivers them very well, I would say, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Um, the film features a cast of characters with diverse diffabilities fighting back against a dictator. What was it like directing such a unique ensemble?
Um, Directing the film did come with challenges. There were, times when it was very stressful because, not just because of weather conditions, but because of situations with the crew. Not so much the cast. There was only one cast member who who was threatening to walk on the production, which got me tensed up and scared and upset. But that resolved itself. Um, but mostly it was sort of a new experience because the previous film I did Clowns in the Woods, I co-directed it with a friend of mine, Kurt Markham, who's also a filmmaker, and it wasn't as huge of a production as this movie was. And this film, like I said, there were a lot of stressful times, but some happy times, but mostly somewhat stressful, like with someone who was the stunt coordinator who was taking over. He wanted to basically take over the production, and we had to, I had to kind of put him in his place. But um, other than that, it was a new, I would just say, to answer your question, it was a learning experience, and hopefully I will learn from this new experience as to build up, how to deal with being a director, knowing what to expect in the future.
Fantastic. So, you've described your autism as something that helps you focus deeply on film. Can you talk about how the focus shows up in your work, especially on this project?
Well, I think to answer your question with the autism, uh, it has helped me with my creativity, like in developing this story, the script, and bringing this movie to life, with the different creative ideas. Um, I don't want to say that my disability, as you say, has um held me back or been a challenge, because that's a subtopic for another time, I would say.
Mhm.
But I would say that it's, basically been leading to different creative ideas and creative outputs. So that's basically how I feel.
That's wonderful. Um, there are clear echoes of current political climates in your film. How much did you want to reflect real world issues, and how did you balance that with the film's genre elements?
Well, I wrote the script for Special Needs Revolt back in 2016, and the film took me 6 years to get lifted off the ground because we started production in 2023. But a lot of the stuff you see in the film, like the police rounding up people with disabilities, to put them back in institutions and stuff, that basically came from what was going on um, prior to the second term with Trump. It was sort of like the first term, and a lot, basically going back further in history to what was going on in Nazi Germany and stuff, where they were rounding up people who are Jewish and so forth. Um, but that was sort of where the idea came from, instead of making it people who are immigrants and migrants, make it people with disabilities as a social commentary. And I had no idea that this year that it would be kind of prophetic to what's going on in the film, are imitating life, what's going on now in America with ICE. Um, but yeah, that was, so a lot of stuff that I've learned about in history and in I would say current political situations at that time inspired me to want to do Special Needs Revolt with mixing in the satire, so it's not just a serious film, and making it more of an action comedy. So, um, I think that, this was something that, I thought, would be interesting to something I really wanted to do because in a previous documentary I had done, Disability Hollywood, I there was a person I interviewed, Lawrence Carter Long, who's like a historian and knows and activist for people with disability who has cerebral palsy. He said that, the world is ready for a disability action hero. So that's basically where it came from, and I wanted to include like the political element in it too.
Very well done. So you've worked alongside Trauma and even made Greetings from Trauma, which is a fantastic documentary. If you haven't seen it, please go seek it out. Um, how did that relationship begin, and what has it meant for you and your filmmaking journey?
Well, basically, I've been a fan of Trauma since I discovered the Toxic Avenger, I would say, as a child. Um, of course, I wasn't able to see the movies until much later, the Toxic Avenger movies, but I remember the cartoon show, because I even had an action figure and coloring book as a little kid, and when I saw the sequel VHS cover at my local video store, I really I was quickly glued in with the cover art and everything and wanted to see it. But my mom at the time, since I was very young, she wouldn't let me rent it until, like I said, years later. And then when I was able to see it, I got really interested in it. And then eventually I got to see the other trauma films like Class of Nukem High, Trauma's War, Kabuki Man. So that's what got me into trauma, was basically seeing those, the cartoon show and the movies, and just the humor and the schlockiness of the films and the over the top gore and type of silly, slapstick violence. And also some of the stuff they were trying to say in the films too later on with there's sort of social commentaries that weren't taken so seriously. That's what kind of got me into wanting to do my film Special Needs Revolt that way, was not, like Trauma, not taking itself too seriously with the message, but enough to get people to wake up and try to change maybe their thoughts and opinions on what's going on in the country or so forth. But yeah, I would say the biggest trauma influence for Special Needs Revolt, would the two actually would be Citizen Toxie and Trauma's War. That was the real big inspirations to do Special Needs Revolt the way I did it.
That comes across very well, actually. As a fan of Trauma, I totally see it. Um, you use genre, especially comedy and dystopian tropes, to explore real issues about disability rights. What do you think genre storytelling offers that more serious dramas might not?
Well, I think genre storytelling like Trauma and my film Special Needs Revolt, what they offer is a different way to look at things. Um, in, like I said before, not so serious way. Because to be honest, a lot of serious films that deal with heavy subjects like American History X, or even the Australian film Whomper Stomper, those are films that I wouldn't be able to watch at all or even watch one. I mean, I would maybe if I was kind of conned into, like being paid to watch it, I could only do it once because of how dark and serious they are. But I think films that are genre films like horror and trauma that especially the ones where the villains get their just desserts, those are films that, in my opinion, depending who you are in my opinion at least, that are films I can get into and don't stress me out as much as the real world does, as serious films do. Like I had mentioned, American History X. So I think those, films like Poultrygeist Night of the Chicken Dead, for example, even though those type of films are could be seen as, gross or not their cup of tea. For me, it's for some reason it's something that I can not be too upset by, get angry or upset by. So I think yeah, I think genre films, especially the Roger Corman films, those are, like New World Pictures and so forth, those are films that I don't stress me out as much, as a regular film that's very, very dark and serious and a drama would.
That's fair enough. I totally get where you're coming from. Now, you've already made a big impact in your documentaries and narrative. What advice would you give to other young creators with disabilities who want to tell their own stories?
Advice I would give for creativity for people to tell their own stories. Well, I would say start out small first, even with a short film for your first movie. Don't make it super huge and big like I did with Special Needs Revolt for the first time, because this movie wound up costing me, from my own personal savings and my executive producer, my mom, her her own money, around to combine was around $100,000, because the money just wasn't there. We had some money come in through backers, crowdfunding, and some a person we knew locally, but it just wasn't there as accessible as we thought it would be on Indiegogo and stuff. Even though we put together what we thought was a very good pitch,
Hmm.
a video pitch to for getting the money on, for as a video. So don't let that discourage any young filmmakers, but just start out with a very simple story for your first movie, um, a short, and then gradually build yourself up. That's how my advice would be as a suggestion.
That's some great advice. Now, before we do open it up to audience questions, if anyone has any questions, um, what's next for you?
Well, what's next for me? I would say I have to wait a year or so, or a few years, but what would be next for me, this wasn't my idea. It was my teacher, who's a special makeup effects artist, um, John Vincent, who helped out with the special effects in Special Needs Revolt. He suggested that we collaborate and do a film called that's a parody of Dawn of the Dead, called Down of the Dead, which would be about Down syndrome zombies, and and it would be at during, they would, be at a drive-in movie theater, and yeah, it's basically the story is for that. I wrote the story treatment, haven't written the script yet. It's, this parody of RFK Jr. He called Dr. Kennedy, and at this laboratory he, you know, tries to discover a vaccine or a cure for the extra chromosome in Down syndrome in babies before they're born, and something terribly goes wrong, and there's a leak in the lab and all that, and the people start turning into these Down syndrome zombies. And then there's this disability group who go on a field trip to the local drive-in movie theater, double feature, and as they're watching the first feature, the zombie outbreak happens and they're attacking the people at the movie theater. And then they hold up in the snack area, the building, the snack bar area. So it's that's a film that I think I would like to venture into. The other ideas for movies, I want to write the scripts and have them turned into graphic novels, because it's just so, this get interest in those first, and use them as what's the word I'm looking for? Just to get them people interested in having them adapted into movies. But Because making a movie nowadays is just, on the budget that I would like to do, is just so difficult to do. It's so almost impossible because there's so much content out there, as everyone knows. And it's but so that's basically what I want to do. The graphic novels that would be adapted from scripts that I'm gonna write, and hopefully this Dawn of the Dead movie,
I hope it
and
all
maybe
works
my
out.
own story as well
Nice.
of my life.
I hope it all works out. That sounds great to me. I can't wait to see what you do next. Does anyone have a question? I'm not going to buy it. Anyone call? Oh, come on down. You can talk in the mic. Or someone can bring it to you, maybe?
We can't
No,
bring
we
it that far.
Oh, you can shout.
Where can we find Clown in the Woods?
Where can we find a clown in the woods?
Clowns in the Woods is available on YouTube. It's also on Tubi TV if you have it in Australia, and I think Amazon Prime, and I think Google Play. But but the best place I would say is Tubi TV, to find it.
But
Who's next?
There's a horror channel that has it.
I was just going to ask, with the community centre scenes towards the end, were those shot with a green screen? I was trying to work out, to look like it was sort of like a still photo with some action on afterwards.
Oh, you mean where President Kruger is being humiliated?
Yes.
That Yeah, that was done in front of a green screen, and then I later filmed it with my camera or and I went back to the community building, and filmed it with my cell phone, the footage.
I actually have a question about that. In the film, you had him censored with a smiley face, but I did notice in the documentary there was nothing covering downstairs. What was the choice to put that smiley face in? Oh,
The choice to put the smiley face to cover his private part was for distribution reasons, because they're very strict on for with censorship in on Amazon, and maybe and even Tubi TV, to get get things on their, streaming platforms. So unfortunately, I did have to cover his private part. But I'm thinking next year I'm gonna try to work on for a DVD or Blu-ray release of having a director's cut, so you actually so there is no Smiley face.
Yeah.
Any final questions? Going once, going twice, and gone. Thank you so much for joining us all the way down here in Australia, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Everybody, Adrian Esposito. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Vanessa, for having me.
Thanks so much for being a part of it. We'll be in touch soon.
You're more than welcome. Thank you.